2009. Dream Theater hits with Black Clouds and Silver Linings. Now let's be frank, let's be honest with ourselves, nation and Dream Theater fans. There really was never anything wrong with Dream Theater's 2000's output. In fact, a lot of their output was pretty damn good in this decade. The only thing that a lot of people, I think, had a bit of a problem with is the fact that each and every album sounded just like a typical Dream Theater album, which I guess I never understood why that was considered to be that big of a deal. Of course they're going to sound like Dream Theater albums. It's Dream Theater. But with Black Clouds and Silver Linings in 2009, a lot of things, even without our knowledge really being present, were coming to an end. And Black Clouds and Silver Linings, the title itself almost seemed to really document that well. Just like the album that followed it up in 2011 seemed to really talk about that situation all its own as well, even down to the cover. But let's talk about the music on the album, and before we get too deep into psychological meanings of covers and, things like that, because we have covers to talk about, but not album covers. We start off with A Nightmare to Remember, and I really like this song, especially off of this album. I like it as an introductory song for the album, and I think what everybody really enjoys about this track, aside from just the fact that it's just a damn good opener, is the middle part. The middle part of the song contains some very, very deep, some very reflective lyrics from John Petrucci, who was actually describing a car accident that he was a part of whenever he was a child, and put a twist on the fact that it was haunting those that kind of caused it. The middle part of this song describes him being in the hospital and a faceless man, which we all are kind of assuming was a doctor, a physician, or somebody who was taking care of him, kind of looking him over and helping him out, telling him to take this for the pain, and meanwhile he's asking about the other people, trying to make sure that everybody is okay, and we really don't know. There seems to be a little bit of unknowing, which kind of leads to the whole portion of the track in which this seems to really be haunting him. This is a really great opener, and this was a song that was written by John Petrucci, except for the music. It was lyrically constructed by John, and just really, even in the parts where it sounds just conversational, just flows very, very well and has just really an exquisite tone to it. I really like this track a lot, in case you were wondering. A Rite to Passage, track number 2, kind of takes a little bit of a deviation from the course. Instead of it being about a specific story or something like that, this one concerns more about Freemasonry, which by 2009 we'd already read and already talked about the Da Vinci Code and angels and demons and all that Dan Brown shit, so Freemasonry was already something that was kind of hot on the public's ear and eye once again, with a lot of documentaries on the History Channel and a lot of different people starting to reawaken feelings about the whole New World Order idea. And I don't mean the wrestling group. However, this song is probably the most infectious with its chorus, and that's something that's awesome because the introductory riff that you hear on this track, get used to it, because you're going to hear it at least I would say another 4 or 5 times. So if you don't like that riff, then you're probably not going to like the song very much, because that's how frequent that you hear it. That song, by the way, also penned lyrically by John Petrucci. Petrucci also did track 3, which is Wither. And this is actually a story about how John songwrites, about how he actually constructs the songs that he is a part of. And you really don't get this from the lyrics all that much unless you really kind of read into it very deeply, and then it makes a certain amount of sense. It really seems like it's somebody more so struggling with themselves or their own personal identity. However, whenever you kind of look into that a little bit deeper, you realize that you can thusly apply that concept and that idea to mean anything in which they're really trying to accomplish. In this case, John kind of has feelings of kind of worthlessness, of kind of that, nothing that he does seems all of that great, and kind of gets to the depths of really a personal, emotional hell, and then what comes from that is almost redemptive in quality. And considering, Dream Theater's collective output with John at the helm, well, that definitely seems to be working for him. Now, I'm going to purposely skip over the Shattered Fortress because we have some things to talk about there. The Best of Times and the Count Tuscany, the latter tracks on the album, the long songs on the album, with the exception of A Nightmare to Remember. The Count Tuscany is kind of interesting because it recollects a a moment that John Petrucci had in Tuscany, which is talked about in the lyrics, whereas The Best of Times is Mike Portnoy's own personal ode to his father who died of cancer. Meanwhile, The Shattered Fortress, it's important because it concludes the 12-step suite. Like I said, things were definitely ending with this record. Now, as we of course know, here 4 years later, it would be the last record that Mike Portnoy would be on. So it seems kind of fitting and kind of almost haunting that he's able to finally finish up his 12-step suite and kind of bring everything full circle before his departure. He had actually planned, after everything was done, of having the band do a performance where they performed the 12-step suite in its entirety, which is something that never happened. Hopefully it does sometime before, you know, all is said and done, but at this point in time, it's kind of a relative impossibility. Now, the real idea behind this song is to kind of act as a concluder and kind of tie everything together. Now, for those of you who have ever listened to a lot of concept albums, either that or those of you who have listened to a lot of progressive music, you know that in many long songs, usually the latter end kind of makes everything circular. It kind of reprises some of the different themes that you heard earlier in the piece of music. It's something that kind of brings everything together, ties it together. It's almost as though throughout the entirety of the song, they're placing a present into a box. They are closing the box, and then the latter moments are usually the bow that goes on top of the box that makes the whole thing, well, whole. So you hear that a lot with this with this song right here, and especially near the end, where you hear everything truly become full circle with the very tones that really began this whole experience from The Glass Prison, as well as tones from another of the songs. Leave which song that is in the comments. So overall, if I were to review the 12-step suite by itself, I mean, this was a tremendously emotional journey, which is kind of brought all together and kind of finished up on this track in just superior fashion. And once again, the 12-step suite song is one in which really evokes a lot of emotion, and it is really a pinpoint song, a standout song on the album. So overall, this is an album that definitely does just have the feelings of a typical Dream Theater album. However, considering there are stories on here that are both kind of personal as well as semi-fictitious, either that or just, you know, kind of ridiculous, or we're just talking about Freemasons for no reason or how we write songs, really the lyrical content has a certain air of real personality to it that really bleeds through. We get to hear many different sides of both John Petrucci and Mike Portnoy in this case, considering they were the lone two that constructed lyrics on this album. Now musically, once again, it's hard to really argue with Dream Theater's quality. Their quality has always been in the fact that they have been able to really make music such as this, music that has, you know, bending time signature changes, flowing solos, and just absolutely mind-numbing number crunching as far as time signature changes go. They've made it into an art form. They've made it into something that bands that follow them are really going to be inspired by this, and they're going to have to do a lot of research and a lot of study in order to really become superior at it. Now, there's something else that we need to talk about, though, and that's the fact that there was another covers album that was released with this album with a special edition. Now, I'm only going to spend a couple of moments on this, principally because I love the fact that they've done a lot of covers. Ideally speaking, I'd love to talk about some of their full cover albums, such as The Number of the Beast, such as Made in Japan by Deep Purple, either that or The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. However, I just don't think I'm going to have time to do that with this discography, with the new album, you know, coming very soon. However, what needs to be said, definitely, is the fact that we have a tribute right away to the late and great Ronnie James Dio, who passed away the same year this album was released. Actually, scratch that, a year after this album was released, with Stargazer, one of the earliest tracks that you heard from his output with Rainbow. And this is just absolutely fantastic, principally because the music is top-notch, and James LeRae's vocals really do suit the song, even though I do prefer Ronnie James's version lyrically just a little bit better. We also have a trio of Queen songs on here. We have Tenement Funster, we have Flick of the Wind, and Lily of the Valley, which once again is strangely and hauntingly reminiscent and representative very well of Freddie's unique voice, not to mention the band's just absolute genius work musically. We also have songs from the Dixie Dregs with Odyssey. We have Take Your Fingers From My Hair, which was originally done by the band Zebra. We have Lark's Tongues and Aspic, part number 2, only part number 2, from King Crimson. And To Tame a Land, of course, from the legendary Iron Maiden. And really, these songs, if you compare them to the originals, you're going to find that, yes, there are going to be keynote differences. Obviously, these are cover songs. These are songs that Dream Theater have essentially taken and made into their own. We've seen this a lot, and we've talked about this a lot on the channel, and in most cases, I've found a lot of problems with some modern covers in the fact that they're trying too much to emanate the original and don't have its own unique mark to it. These all have their own unique mark to it, and while they are trying somewhat to emanate the original, that way it does have an air of familiarity to it, Dream Theater is able to put their own personal stamp on it. So once again, if you have the opportunity to find the deluxe edition that has this, you're going to want it, because it's definitely well worth it. And that takes us to the end of our Mike Portnoy journey. And it doesn't take us to the end of our Dream Theater journey, but the 2011 album, The Dramatic Turn of Events, I've already done that. So why don't you go and talk about that now? But I will say on this, as opposed to that, considering that happened 2 years ago, for all of you who have decided to watch and take this journey with me, thank you very much. And I hope that you've enjoyed the Dream Theater discography. And I hope that you guys will stick around to hear my thoughts on the new album, which will be coming a lot sooner than you might think.